anything else, Jesus healed people and he fed people. We spoke this morning in the service that installed the new Bishop of Virginia as the diocesan bishop about the banquet table that is set for all people. It's an ancient vision of what that healed world looks like. It is the feast to which we understand Jesus invited everybody. You all come if you're hungry. No limitations. Come and eat. Come and eat. Come and eat. Hunger is the root of the world's suffering. If you don't have enough to eat, you cannot be healthy in body or mind or soul. We think it starts with feeding people their most immediate needs. If you ignore a person's stomach hunger, you have ignored the person's dignity as a human being, you have ignored the person's spiritual possibility.
On another not unrelated tack, in the midst of ongoing controversy in Christianity about the obligations of human beings toward non-human nature, issues of dominion or stewardship or partnership and all of that, could you talk to us about the Church's stance on care for the environment and global warming? And I think we'd all be interested to hear you bring into that how your first career as oceanographer has influenced your perspectives on that, and then through you has influenced the Church's stance.
Okay. Let me start with the dominion piece. For a long time, much of Christianity read Genesis to say that human beings were meant to dominate the earth. If you look at the roots of that word, dominate, it comes from domos, home. To be good housekeepers, good homekeepers, good home tenders is really the meaning behind that word. Not to lord it over nature. Part of the other difficulty in the Judeo-Christian tradition historically was a conflict with other religious traditions around the Hebrew people that worshiped nature. And early Judaism set itself off against those nature-worshiping traditions by saying we don't worship nature, we worship the Lord of nature. And Christianity took that up, sometimes in unexamined ways, and both traditions have really gone to a different place from that early conflict. So that today we understand that we're meant to be caretakers of all of creation, not to use it up. It's not ours to use up. We're meant to use it for the benefit of all of creation, and not just all of human creation. Certainly, as the kind of scientist I worked in systems. Oceanographers study the whole ocean system. They may focus on one piece of it, but you can't understand the life cycle of a squid or its ecological relationships without understanding something about water masses and currents and the geology under the ocean, etc., etc., etc. You have to be willing to think in terms of connectedness. That's also something that the religious traditions, the great religious traditions, have always talked about. We are connected. Christians talk about being members of the body of Christ. And a recent theologian named Sally McFay talks about creation as the body of God. The body of God. How God makes God self-evident in human understanding, in human view. Focus on care for the earth is an essential piece of what it means to live a faithful life. To care for other creatures, other parts of creation. We cannot do an adequate job of loving God if we decisions about those things have impacts not just on the ecosphere, but on the lives of people in sub-Saharan Africa and on the ability of people in the South Pacific to even stay on their ancestral lands, which are slowly disappearing under the sea. We are all interconnected, and the more we can encourage and invite and be aware of that way of looking at the world, we think the more faithful we can be.
Speaking of interconnection and shifting over to more ecclesiological question, I guess, the Episcopal Church is the United States province of the worldwide Anglican Communion. Really a couple of combined questions. One is, why do we speak of the global obligations, these global obligations, just in terms of the Episcopal Church as opposed to in terms of the worldwide communion? And actually, while we're on that subject, we see the Episcopal Church and maybe the Anglican Communion too sort of coming apart at the seams. I mean, do we not need to put our own house in order before we can act globally?
Okay. The Episcopal Church, yes, has its roots in the United States, but it is also present, as I told you, in Haiti, but also in Taiwan, Micronesia, Honduras, Ecuador, Colombia, Venezuela, Dominican Republic, the British and U.S. Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, Austria, Belgium, France, Germany, Italy, and Switzerland. We are an almost global province. In many of those places, we're there for colonial reasons. Because the United States government went there, the church followed. We're present in Europe because initially our ministry there was a ministry to expatriates or to embassies and business interests. But in all of those places, the church has become indigenized. It worships largely in the local language or languages, and it attends to the local people, not primarily Americans anymore. Our interconnectedness is, I think, a growing edge for Episcopalians. We're beginning to learn about the fact that we're not just in the United States and we don't just speak English. Even in the United States, we don't just speak English. I think the Diocese of Los Angeles worships in 13 different languages. Japanese, Vietnamese, Hmong, Cantonese, etc., etc., etc. Our relationships across the Anglican Communion come from our common roots in the Church of England. And again, most of those connections have their distant roots in colonialism. We think that God has the ability to work something good out of initiatives that aren't always holy, and that's why we stay. We stay and try to build Christian communities in places where we may no longer have a colonial presence, with the goal of assisting that church to become a self-sufficient and self-governing and self-propagating entity. Our challenges across the Anglican Communion today, I think, have two primary causes. One is the speed of communication. When it took 6 months for a letter to go to South Africa and come back, differences of opinion were a lot easier to ignore. And the first Lambeth Conference, the first gathering of Anglican bishops in 1867, came about because of differences of opinion between the Canadians and the South Africans over bishops teaching things that other bishops found uncomfortable, and over bishops going into places they weren't invited. Those issues haven't changed in 140-odd years. But the speed of communication makes them that much more challenging.